Greetings, everyone. Dr. Anita Stewart-McCafferty here with you, welcoming you to Module 2 of EDU 679, Supervision and Evaluation of Teachers. I want to thank you for the work that you have been doing in Module 1 already. I really appreciate learning about your experiences with supervision and evaluation to date, and thinking about how it might impact our future leadership roles around supervision and evaluation. I look forward to reading what you have to say and what your colleagues had to say when you interviewed them. In the discussion board this past week, another aspect that we looked at were our current teacher evaluation plans. So it's interesting to note the variety of evaluation plans. So some people are using the framework of Danielson or Marzano or Marshall, or the main schools of excellence, which is based on the national board standards. And we have some homegrown versions of that. And it's just kind of interesting to look at the length of the evaluation cycle, the number of observations included, if those include pre-observation conferences and post-observation conferences, if districts are still including student learning outcomes, the student learning growth component that was part of our original law, LD 1858, that came about when we opted out of the NCLB federal requirements. And so it's just been interesting to watch the morphing of that, and then what districts have chosen to keep, or maybe even haven't realized through their steering committees that they have some options of being able to back off some components such as the SLO. It's also interesting that some districts are choosing to include surveys from students or from community members as part of that evaluation system. And then of course, professional goals and a number of other observation data points or other data that might support the growth and performance of a teacher. So really interesting, and we're going to continue obviously to explore that. One of the bedrocks of any evaluation system, or often any supervision system, is being able to get into classrooms and observe what's happening. So there's been a bit of a switch that we want to think about, and that's from simply observing the teacher to think about their practices and their effectiveness, to really thinking about the impact that the choices that we make around the instructional strategies, the assessment strategies, the classroom environment, the content, etc., what the choices that we make, the impact that it has on student learning. Okay, so we're going to start looking at teacher moves, but not through the lens, again, of just self-actualizing or saying, here's a set of best practices that work, no matter who you're teaching, what grade level, what content area, in which community, and regardless of students' backgrounds. So we want to sort of move away from that and really start to think about what kinds of feedback can we give to one another and to those that we supervise and evaluate to help them grow in the service of helping to improve student learning. So what we're going to do this week during Module 2 is we're going to start exploring in more depth that concept of effective teacher moves. And we're going to begin by looking at the in-task standards. So a set of national standards that have been adopted by almost every state. I think we still have one exception to the rule across the United States. And what the in-task standards do is they help to answer the question, what does good teaching look like? So it was an attempt a number of years ago, a couple of decades ago, to answer that question with those who are most concerned about teaching and learning. So it has lots of input from, you name the organization, and then the role. So from teacher role on up through administrators, and then parents and business and community partners. And it gets updated every so often, every 7 to 10 years or so, you'll see an update of the in-task standards. So we're going to look at those 10 standards and be able to start to do some mini observation practice. And so we'll be aligning what we're observing from classroom videos, since we can't really get into classrooms right now, and to help to establish a foundation for you, a common foundation. So we're going to be observing some classroom videos and starting to align the moves that we're seeing to the in-task standards. So let's look at the guiding questions for this week. There are 3 of them. How do we determine what effective or good teaching looks like? What are the benefits and challenges of using various observation tools and standards of practice? And how do we align classroom observations to agreed upon standards of practice? Our 4 module objectives are as follows. Identifying effective teacher moves from videos of classroom instruction. Align observational data from videos of classroom instruction with the in-task standards. Develop probing and reflective questions for use in post-observation conferences. So I like to think about those conferences as being feedback dialogue. And then the 4th module objective is to use the praise, probe, and polish observation tool for collecting classroom data and guiding feedback conversations. So this week, we're going to delve more deeply into the Rethinking Teacher Supervision and Evaluation, the 2nd edition by Kim Marshall. And we're going to look at chapters 2 through 4, which focus on his conception of mini observations. Now, one of the things that I want you to know is that whenever I have us read, whether it's an article, a report, a common text, or book choices, it doesn't mean that it is the way or the perspective that I want you to buy. I want you to always read what you come across in any of our graduate courses, including this one, with a critical eye. Because I don't believe that there's a one-size-fits-all solution for supervision and evaluation, nor, frankly, any other topic in teaching and learning and leading. So I really want you to think about the context in which you find yourself and what would really work to move your teachers, your schools, your organizations forward with regards to teaching and learning. So I say that because Kim Marshall has his own specific view of what mini observations looks like. I love his concepts. I appreciate where he's coming from. So he really describes his experiences and how those experiences in South Boston during the time when there was a very adversarial role between the school administration, district administration, and the teacher labor union. So that really shaped and informed, in part, the way that he developed his system and his beliefs around mini observations. So I want you to read it with that in mind, and then think about how you and or your district currently, or one in the future that you might be leading, might adapt some of his principles. Okay, so we're going to delve into mini observations, and some of the concepts around that is really this idea of making more frequent, more ongoing trips into the classrooms to see what's going on, and really to be able to say, how are the choices that teachers are making impacting student learning? And so really, getting an insider look at student learning. So talking to students, observing students, and of course, in order to do that, we're also thinking about what is it that we as the professional educators can do to really shape a positive learning environment for all of our students across the board. So chapters 2 through 4 will help you really to think about Marshall's version of mini observations, and we're going to use it as a foundational piece to talk about the morphing and modifications and adaptations that a school or district or a leader might make. You're also going to read an article by the New Teaching Center, called The Widget Effect. And the widget effect came out a few years back, and it really takes a critical perspective on the idea of teacher evaluation. So it's an interesting perspective to consider, and it will be part of your discussion board. And you'll be asked during this week to be able to talk about your key takeaways from the widget effect. It could be your questions, major ideas, the concepts that you have, and to be able to put that into a visual graphic of some kind. It could be a concept map, it could be a chart, a web, it might be an infographic, anything of your sketch note, anything of your choosing, to be able to start to have that dialogue that's been part of the national conversation around supervision and evaluation. Now, in order to really start our work around thinking about evaluation and supervision, we're going to, for this week's assignment, we're going to do our first of several practice classroom observations. Now, if you've been a mentor before, or you've been a department head or a team leader, you probably have been in and observed in other classrooms and have given feedback of some sort or another. So I'm not suggesting that this is your first attempt at that, but I am suggesting that we're going to look at it in a systemic kind of way, right? To be able to think really purposefully about what we're doing, what choices we're making, what choices our districts might have made for us around the frameworks that we're using. So there's another video that I've created for you for this module, where I do a lecture, if you will, on the in-task standards, identifying effective teacher moves, aligning them to the in-task standards, and using an observation tool that I sort of developed and morphed and adapted over the years called Praise, Probe, and Polish. This particular tool is really designed to get you to think about success and next step feedback. So it's all about really the feedback conversation, having a meaningful feedback conversation with the educator that you observe. So for that assignment, you're going to delve into one of, I think I put more than 20 videos as options for you to be able to watch and to be able to identify teacher moves that you're seeing, align those moves to the in-task standards, and then think about if you were engaging in a post-observation conversation with that particular teacher, what's some of the feedback? What are some of the questions or suggestions that you might make? What would that look like for a conversation? So that's really the assignment. And you'll have an opportunity throughout that assignment to become really familiar with the in-task standards. Now, one of the reasons I start here is because according to Maine law, the Effective Educator Law, any school district in the state of Maine, and this is true for many other states, has to have a set of standards of practice that align to the in-task standards. So that's the bedrock, okay? So there are some pre-approved frameworks like Danielson, Marzano, National Board, through the lens here in Maine of the Maine Schools for Excellence version. Marshall's rubrics have been added. And so the in-task standards are, again, that sort of foundational look at a set of standards that help guide us into a common understanding of what does it mean to have effective or good teaching. I hope that you enjoy this module and this dive. In future weeks, we'll dive into other standards of practice like Kim Marshall's rubrics, the Marzano, the Danielson rubrics, etc. All right, have a great week of learning. I look forward to reading your posts in the discussion board, and then also your submission, that first attempt at being able to do a mini observation based on a classroom video that you choose from a pretty extensive list that I've put together for you. All right, enjoy.